education. So I want to give you a little bit of my overarching story here as I dive into education, because it'll help you to understand how I used education to really help in my career development journey. And so the first thing I want to take you to is that, yes, I am trans and I've been very out about my transition. Not all transgender people feel that they have to be out or that they have to be the one to educate you. So it's really important that when we're talking about education in this space, that we don't always go to the trans person or someone who's gender nonconforming or someone who is anywhere on the spectrum to give that education for us. It's not necessarily the place that they want to be in. So back in 2009, 2010, I built this plan to start looking for a job. Post 2008 economic crisis, I actually lost my house and I lost my job, and we were basically homeless, and with 4 mouths to feed, it can be a lot of pressure to go out and find employment. And looking for a job, I really ultimately uncovered that I could find employment because I had white, cis-presenting male privilege in these job interviews. And I was having conversations with human resources professionals about where I would start in the organization, and they kept telling me I needed to start at the bottom. And that's when it hit me that I was not going to be able to continue and rise up in my career once again, because I had done it before, starting at the bottom and working my way up in another organization. But I was not going to be able to do that again without being authentic. It was going to be what would lead me to be part of the 42% suicide attempt rate that the transgender community faces. And I needed to be able to be authentic to be able to survive. And so I made the decision to transition. I said, if I'm going to start at the bottom, I'm going to be me. And so I started to show up to these job interviews the very next day as my authentic self. And that's when I started facing discrimination for the very first time, from one day to the next. Privilege one day, discrimination the next day. And my discrimination that I faced looked very differently depending on the situation, but ultimately rolled up. Some of the things that I was told was, we would never hire anyone like you. You have the wrong address. Please leave. I had the cops called on me. I got trespassed. These did not equal great conversations with human resources professionals. And for me, it was very shocking and very eye-opening. And that's when I decided to use the empowering action of education to really start to have a dialogue with these individuals. I needed to empower myself, and I needed to use education as my way of empowerment. And so education took a different realm, and that's when I started talking about the transgender community. And so I would use resources and tools at my disposal to really start to teach HR professionals in the job interview about my different dimension of diversity. And I would talk about the transgender community. I would talk about what it means to be trans. I would talk about gender identity, the deeply held belief that you have in your head and in your heart and in your mind, and how you identify as your gender. When did someone tell you what your gender was? Or did you just take what the birth certificate says and the doctor guessed on the box? Right? There are 18 states and municipalities that in the United States, as well as the District of Columbia, that offer third gender on a birth certificate or a driver's license. So realize that that is part of the new changing norm that's coming. But also, how does your expression work? I know that in this work from home environment, maybe not for me, I try to dress up every day, but for most people, maybe sweatpants, or maybe you wear a button-down shirt and then shorts on the bottom. I don't know. But your gender expression, the way you express yourself, is tied to so many more things than just what you wear. It's much more than that. It also could be how you talk, how you walk, who you surround yourself with, the things that you do. Your expression is deeply tied to so many things. And then the last part, right, is who you love. And of course, that's your sexual orientation. And so fundamentally understanding that, I use the gender unicorn as a great example to help. But then I might also have the point to educate these HR professionals about pronouns, because pronouns are so important. They build confidence for others when you use the right pronoun, or when you share what your pronoun is in a discussion, or when you first meet a candidate, or when you first meet someone that you talk to and you introduce yourself. And so I'm Ashley Brundage, and I use she, her, and hers as my pronouns. And even if everyone in the entire organization knows what your pronouns are, you should be using them, because fundamentally it will showcase inclusion without you saying anything else about inclusion. And so realizing that you have a gender identity. Everyone has a gender identity. Everyone has a gender expression. Everyone has a sexual orientation. And everyone has pronouns. And if you take a moment right now and you share them in the chat, that's a great way to showcase inclusion for others. Share with the rest of the group what your pronouns are. Take the time to do that, because it shows more inclusion of others. Because for the one person who's in today's meeting who's wondering if their coworkers are inclusive of their pronouns, they'll now get that message where you didn't have to go purposely to tell them. You told everybody. It's inclusive in nature. And just realize that there are an infinite amount of pronouns that exist, and new ones emerge every single day. And you have to go outside your lens to learn new things about pronouns all of the time. The word they was 2019's word of the year. It was searched more than any other word by Merriam-Webster. There's a reason for that, because they can be one person. It doesn't have to be multiple people.